All right, welcome to episode 27 of The Expert and the Idiot. Today I'm talking to Ava DeJesus of Jurassic Wildlife. And
Hi.
how you doing?
I'm doing good. Yeah, I have a lot of snakes maternally incubating at the moment, so that's very interesting. It's very exciting.
That's awesome. How many snakes do you have altogether, and what are you keeping?
Altogether, I think I have around 30. I don't have too many, and I only keep Antaresia species. So the spotted pythons, the Simpson's pythons, and the children's pythons. And I'm going to be getting into pygmy pythons soon.
That's awesome. Okay,
Yeah.
now you're in Australia,
Yes, we're in the Gold Coast.
but you don't have an Australian accent. So what's your story? How did you end up there? And yeah, I'd like to hear it.
All right, so I was born here, but my parents were raised in Canada, and
Okay.
I've been homeschooled. So I have their accent because they were the ones that constantly around me and teaching me instead of Australian teachers. So, and my mom is Polish and my dad's Portuguese. That's where my last name comes from. And yeah, so I have a lot of different things going on, but I have the Canadian accent because I was homeschooled.
That's incredible. It's incredible that you don't have any accent at all.
I know, and I've been to Canada once when I was like 4,
Yeah.
and that's it. I've been here my whole life. I don't really travel, so
That's wild. So what brought your parents to Australia?
um I'm not 100% sure. I believe they just I think my mom wanted to move for the beaches cuz Canada is freezing and they don't like the cold. So yeah, they got married in Canada and they came here for the
Wow.
beaches and the heat.
I guess California and Florida were off the menu.
Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. So what's it been like growing up there and being in the reptile hobby in Australia?
Well, I started keeping when I was young. I got my first snake when I was about 6.
Hmm.
And I mean, I loved them way before then. And I got into it because used to watch Snake Hunters TV, which was basically this girl and her dad who bred snakes. And they were somewhere in America, I believe. And I was like, wow, that's so cool. I want to do that. And I got my first snake. I did years of research. And then I got my first snake and I loved it. So I got more and I wanted to breed them. And I made a whole business out of it.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's awesome. And now you have an actual a regular day job as well, right?
Yeah, so I'm a vet nurse intern. I'm currently getting a certificate, and I finished biology at TAFE. I got a distinction in that, and yeah. Besides the internship, I don't work. The Jurassic wildlife business is my primary source of income.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so cool. So, what is it? What's it like being into snakes and being over there? Do you ever see anything that's in the American hobby that you wish you could have, or basically anywhere else in the world in the hobby that you wish you could have, or are you totally satisfied with the Australian species you keep?
I do love the Australian species. They're amazing, but I used to the first snake that I wanted was a ball python because that's what the YouTube channel mostly kept that I used to watch, and they were just very popular and out there. And then when I realized that they were illegal, I went straight to the spotted python because they're just gorgeous. I love them. But if I had to keep a non-native species, it would either be hognose snakes or black-tailed crebos. I
Hmm.
think they're just so cute. I love them.
Yeah. So, what? Walk me through your keeping. How do you keep, and how has that evolved and changed over time? You do a lot of
Mhm,
sort of enriched enclosures, right,
mhm.
with large sort of decorated enclosures, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't agree with keeping in tubs long term. I keep in tubs for my hatchlings because of space, and they're so small. It's big enough. And of course, I still provide enrichment and ventilation. But And I always used to keep it in enclosures. We've all made mistakes. I used to use the red light lamps. I probably didn't have my temperatures 100%. So I've definitely made mistakes and learned from that. And I still have my first snake. He's pretty old and he's doing great. He's gone through all of my mistakes and he's still 100% healthy, which is amazing. And yeah, so I keep in enclosures, glass enclosures. I do want to get an upgrade. Definitely, I want to upgrade my whole setup to a little bit bigger, a little bit longer, and add some more climbing enrichment. Because right now, I usually just have like a log or a perch or something, but I want to make like built-in horizontal perches so that it gives them that more space and I'm not just wasting all the airspace.
Hmm.
But yeah, I'm definitely pro enclosures. I do not use tubs. Not even for quarantine. Quarantine, you can use tubs, but I just prefer to keep it enclosures. And I use any leftover enrichment I have that I either wash really well or I just discard when they're quarantining. And yeah, my hatchlings are kept in tubs. But for all my adults, all my breeding adults, they're kept in enclosures, and they're maternally incubating in their enclosures as well.
Wow. And how many clutches have you had?
I haven't got a lot of clutches this year. One was entirely slugs, besides two that weren't very well veined. So they're in the incubator because the mom wasn't doing a very good job at taking care of them. I'm not 100% sure if they're going to make it. And then I had another clutch of, it was my marbled 66% Het T plus paired with my Chimera or Paradox. Still got to figure out what's going on there. And that one is also in the incubator because the mom she wasn't taking care of them and the eggs were denting and because they weren't getting warm enough. So those went in the incubator as well. And then I have 4 females that are incubating. So we had 6 clutches this year. I was supposed to have 7, but one of my other, my albino spotted python, she's taking a break from breeding this year. So my other 4 are all maternally incubating. And I have 1 Simpson's, 2 children's, and a spotted python incubating.
Wow. And you got some of your animals from Jason of Aussie Arboreals, right? And that's who referred me to you
Yeah.
because he said that he really liked the way that you keep your animals and everything.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I think I got my Ray line Stimson's pythons from Jason. They're gorgeous. They are so healthy and they're growing amazing. I cannot wait to breed them. They're going to make beautiful babies.
Yeah, his diamond pythons are insane too.
Yes, I love those. I'm not big into the Morelia. I don't keep them. I used to have one. I don't intend to keep them in the future, but they are gorgeous. I do love them.
Nice. Hey, does anybody in the hobby, like, do you have other hobbyists around you? Or are you kind of an island?
Well, in my like local area,
Yeah.
no. I had a neighbor who just had a pet carpet python, but they don't have that one anymore and they've moved. But besides that, I do know obviously some reptile breeders, but not very close to me. No, I'm not really in touch with anyone that's in close proximity to me.
Have you ever thought about keeping outdoors?
Absolutely, yeah. When I get enough space, I would love to upgrade. I want to get a monitor lizard and then a black-headed python, and I would 100% keep those outdoors. But for my breeding, for my Antresia, I would probably like to keep them just inside because they're mostly my breeding projects
Mm.
and just upgrade their enclosures.
Okay. So what do you think your upgraded enclosures are going to end up looking like?
Well, they'll definitely be longer. I'm thinking probably about like 90 centimeters, a meter long, 6 centimeters high, 45 or 60 centimeters deep, something around that. And just so a little bit longer. I'm still doing some research on substrates. I currently use Gypsy and I do love it. It works amazing, but I'm doing some research on using more of an earthy, natural mulch substrate just for aesthetics, and also possibly it might help humidity when I do maternal incubation, even though I haven't had a problem with the Gypsy, which I'm quite surprised with because it doesn't hold humidity very well.
Mm.
But the eggs haven't dented. They're doing amazing. They have, I think, my first female that laid, she only has 40 or 35 days left of incubation. And yeah, and definitely just I'm working on a line of water bowls and hides, enrichment. We have artificial plants for sale. I'm getting some samples of water bowls and hides and logs and all that for enclosures. So definitely I'd be implementing my own line of enrichment into my enclosures and just adding a lot more of enrichment to it. Just you can never have too much really.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you're going to be actually producing your own like reptile care line?
Yeah, absolutely. We're also working on hatchling enclosures, which we've sold a couple demos of them, and we're going to get them in bulk. And then eventually, I will start creating my own large adult size enclosures, which I'll also use for my collection because there's just small little things about pretty much every reptile product that annoy me. So I'm going to be fixing those things and try to make them as easy as possible to use and as best for the animal as possible.
Can you give me some examples, like in regards to like the adult cages? Like what are you using right now, and what do you not like about it, and kind of how what are you going to change and alter?
So I use glass enclosures, and I feel they're a bit too open. The entire backside is dark, but it's more of a transparent dark. It's like black stained acrylic or something.
Hmm.
So I would want to do the back and possibly also the sides of the enclosure black, so it's a little bit more secure for the animal. And water bowls. I've always had a problem with water bowls because they're made of like resin. They hold bacteria and they are porous, so they can get moldy and like slimy on the inside very easily. So I'm
Hmm.
having to clean them so often because obviously my snakes need fresh water. So we're working on a line of ceramic water bowls so that it's a non-porous material and it's so much easier to clean. I have a cup. I'm trying to switch out to ceramics at the moment while I wait for my line bulk order to come in, and I absolutely love them. I haven't had a problem. I'm using just dog bowls at the moment, but they're a bit too high and they're a bit too big and they're a bit too deep. So there's all those little things that we're going to be fixing and making better.
So how often are you changing your water out right now, and how are you cleaning the water bowls?
Soap and water, definitely. And sometimes I'll put them in the dishwasher just to make sure they're really sterilized. And I'll change them out as often as I can if I have the time every day, every 2 days.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. The what did you call it? Chipsy? Was that the name
Yeah,
of the?
Gypsy, the substrate.
Yeah. What kind of substrate is that? Is that like aspen?
It's very similar to aspen. It's like wood shavings.
Okay. So you plan on switching over to like a coconut husk or something like that?
Yeah, something like that. I'm definitely doing some research because the species I keep, they can handle humidity levels from 20% to 80%. So I'm not worried about the humidity. I've never had a problem with stuck shed. And the times that I have, I just soak their food in water to get them more hydration and it's gone away. So yeah, I just wanted to switch for more of the aesthetic purposes and for maternal incubation for the humidity because it holds humidity better, but I haven't had a problem with my Gypsy so far. So yeah, I would probably switch mainly just for aesthetic purposes, and if I do some research and find more benefits, then yeah.
Okay. And with breeding Antaresia, what age are you breeding them at?
I try. I don't really work on age. I work on weight, but obviously, I like them to be at least males at least a year and a half, and females about 2 years,
Oh
even
wow.
if they are weight before that. But even if they are older than that, I won't breed them until they're up to weight. So my Simpsons Python is probably Cupcake. Her name is. She's probably the only one that I've bred. She's quite older now. I think she's 3, but she's really small for some reason. That's why I've been putting off breeding her. And she's a little bit on the lower side of the weight. She's only, I think, 250 grams. So I didn't want to breed her because I don't want her to lose too much weight. But she produced a clutch. It was wonderful. She's still in really good body condition. So sometimes you just gotta figure out what's best for the situation.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are the ideal weights for a female?
So typically, I like my males to be absolute minimum 150 grams, if I can 200 grams. And for my females, I like them to be minimum 300. If they're at like 295, I'll still breed them. It also just depends on their body weight. So I know Cupcake, the Stimson's Python, she's a little bit on the chubbier side. So I wasn't too worried about her losing that much weight or that much nutrition and fat content. So yeah, I liked my females to be about 300 grams minimum, but I have females that are like 400, 500 grams, 600. So it's a minimum.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right. I have a spotted python, and I'm going to be
Mm,
getting another pair here shortly. So
mm.
I'm always curious to learn what are your temperatures like, and of course they're going to be in Celsius, so I'm going to have to try to.
Yeah. I have no idea what they'd be in Fahrenheit, but right now I've changed my temperatures to 31 degrees for the hotspot because of their maternally incubating and I don't want to cook the eggs. But usually I'll set them to about 33, 34 because if I set them to 34, there's a layer of gypsy, so it won't get to 34. Actually, it'll get to more like 33, and then if I set them to 33, it'll stay around 33, 32, which is about my temperature range. But because of the maternally incubating females, they've kind of dug a hole in the substrate, so they're right on top of the heat mat. So I had to turn the temperatures down so they didn't cook the eggs.
Mm,
Yeah.
okay. How many have you run into issues with maternal incubation? Do you prefer that over incubation?
Well, this is my first year of maternally incubating, and so far it is amazing.
Mm,
I have had zero problems with eggs. None of them are denting, none of them are going moldy, and they're the perfect temperature. Even if the hot spot is like 32 and the female's like 29, the eggs are always 31. I don't know how they do it, but they know what they're doing. And I have always had problems with the incubation. Like our power went out just earlier and I checked on the incubator and it was set to 31 because I have some clutches in there and the power went out and it set itself to like 12 degrees.
oh,
So I
geez.
had to rush to set it back to 31 because the eggs are going to go cold. And I've always had problems with the mold. I've tried perlite, vermiculite, 50-50 ratio, 40-20 ratio. I've always had problems. And yeah, and so far maternal incubation is just it's going so well.
Nice. Do you have any snakes that you keep just as pets, or are they all part of a project?
They're pretty much all part of a project. Wizard was my first snake, and I was planning on just keeping him as kind of a pet and not breeding him. But he's a blonde morph, and I have an albino female. So I thought, why not? Eventually, when I get to breeding her again, I'll probably put them together. But no, not really. So yeah, I have projects for all my snakes.
Nice. Do you do any kind of herping or anything?
I love to, but I can never find anything. I live in forest. I live very rural and I never see anything. I think I've seen like one or two snakes, carpet
Mm,
pythons. So, and I go herping because we have expansion of forest behind us. So I go herping in there. I'll go to different parks and I haven't found anything, but I do love herping and I would definitely like to do it more.
where are you about in Australia?
We're in the Gold Coast.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. So, do you guys have like a generator or anything for the power outages? Or are they pretty common?
Yeah, no, not really. Sometimes we'll get them if we're getting worked on our electrical or we have a storm or something. We definitely do have generators if we need to. We had a power outage earlier this year for like 3-4 days straight, and we were cooking on our camping gas stovetop, and the generator went to the snakes, so they had heat.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Do
they're more
do you
important than us.
do you keep any lizards right now, or only snakes?
No, I don't. I used to keep two bearded dragons. I was planning on breeding them, but they were just so much work.
Mm,
I do not like compared to snakes. I just don't have the time to care for them that much. I don't have the time to change their enclosure every day because they pooped in it, or to feed them every day. Um, and I will admit that I probably didn't keep them 100% properly. I kept them on paper towel because of all they can get impaction. And so I would definitely, if I were to keep a lizard, and I definitely want to keep monitors, or one monitor and possibly a blue tongue skink, probably leaning towards a monitor, I would definitely have to just wait till I have the time, the space, and definitely do more research and keep it properly.
Right on.
Yeah.
Do you think so Antaresia over there, are they like the staple pet python?
I think so. Antaresia or carpet pythons, probably a coastal or a Darwin, are probably the most common. Um, yeah, I think children's and spotteds would be more common than Stimsons, in my opinion, and pygmies they're very hard to find because they're very hard to breed. It's very hard to get the hatchlings eating, so it can be a pain.
Mm.
Yeah.
Are they like a display animal, or do you think like are with proper handling and everything? Can you calm them down? I know mine's pretty feisty.
Yeah, I do find that spotted pythons tend to be more food motivated.
Mm,
Children's pythons tend to be more flighty, and then Stimsons are just like puppy dogs. That's just
mm.
from my collection. All of my spotted pythons, I know if I don't use a hook to take them out, so they know that like I'm not feeding them, they will definitely try to eat me. And some snakes, like Wizard, my first snake, you can't hold him at all. He will just bite you. And sometimes it works to my advantage. I just let him bite me while I clean out the enclosure. Makes it easier. So he wraps around my arm for like 10 minutes. I'm like, okay. And yeah, so I would say they're definitely a more handleable snake. They're great for people who are starting out compared to like green tree pythons. I would not handle those very often, or if at all. They're definitely more display. They're more delicate. So
Do you plan on getting into those?
I was going to. I met with a couple breeders. I was going to get a little neonate, but they I don't know. I felt like sticking to the Antaresia. I really love them. I love that they come in all different colors and morphs, and I love that they're just so hardy. They're so easy to keep, and they're just awesome. Like they're the perfect size. I had a jungle carpet python, and he was just so mean. And I'm like, I have been spending so much time handling him. He's gonna get really long. I don't know how I'm gonna deal with this when he's a big, full-grown carpet python. So even if that's what I love about the Antaresia, even if they are not very handleable or nice, you can still hold them because they're just so small. They're not gonna do anything.
Yeah. Yeah, I got tagged right on the tip of my nose once, and I couldn't believe how
Oh,
much it bled from the spotted python.
yes. It's like it barely hurts, but it's like it looks so gruesome.
Yeah, yeah, it's wild. Yeah, you hardly feel it, but they're like tiny razor blades.
Yeah, I got bitten on the nose by a little baby green tree before because they have like the second longest fangs of all the non-venomous snakes next to the emerald tree boas. And I was at a breeder's and I opened the tub and I was like, "Oh, where is it?" And I like stuck my head in and it just bit me right on the nose. Wasn't a good idea, probably.
So, how do you provide heat? Are you doing do you do any kind of lighting for heat, or is it just under tank?
I do under tank at the moment. I used to do lighting. I don't provide UVB at the moment either, which I definitely do want to change because I haven't found many things that say like UVB is super beneficial for snakes. Obviously it is for lizards, but I still 100% believe there is some beneficial element to it. It's UVB, it's helping their bones. So I do want to provide UVB in the future, and I would, after I get the longer enclosures, do some upgrades, I would probably like to switch to above tank heating. But yeah, under right now I just do under tank heat mats.
Yeah, it's you can really go down some rabbit holes when it comes to lighting and
Yeah.
heating and everything, especially with UV. I'm going to be actually having a guy on in a couple weeks to
Mm.
really get into it and what is best to provide and all that. And I'm sure he's going to tell me everything I'm doing is wrong. So
Yeah. You're always learning. You're always finding out new things. And it's just, It's important to keep researching because if you just stick to the things you know in your own way, then if people will start finding out new things. Oh, UVB is actually really really beneficial for snakes, and you got to keep up with it because you're getting new information. You should always be upgrading your keeping.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, it's constantly evolving and changing. So,
yeah.
do you how do when you're going through the breeding process, are you cycling temperatures, food, both? Like how do you get them ready for breeding?
Yeah, so I do both. I do a cooling at the start of the year, and I think it'd be around April, and you bring the or March, you bring the temperatures down in 1 hour increments until you get to 12 hours off, so it's completely off at night. And then from there you leave it at that for about a week or two, and then I introduce in about May. So I leave them in. I used to do a 3 days in, 3 days out regimen, but now I kind of do a 1 week in, 1 week out, 1 week in, 1 week out, week out. Can't say it right. To at least leave more time in there, and I think it has been good because I have one female. She breeds every other season. It's
Hmm.
weird. Even if I pair her, she won't. She just won't lay eggs. Like she'll ovulate and she'll reabsorb them. So this year this is supposed to be the year that she's supposed to lay eggs. So I left the male in a little bit longer in hopes that she would definitely get the eggs would get fertilized. And yeah, she laid eggs. It's all went well. So I think I'm gonna stick to that and I'd leave them in for a little bit longer. And then once they're paired in August, I start bringing up the temperatures, late July, August, again in 1 hour increments until it's on just for 24 hours a day. And after that, I leave that on for about a week or two, and then I can start feeding them again. I'll even feed my females when they're maternally incubating because they are hungry. They will
Mm.
come off of their eggs and come out and want food. So I will feed them small meals. Some won't take them, but if they're hungry, then I'll happily feed them so they can get their body condition back up.
So while they're incubating, they're taking food and then they just go right back to the eggs?
Yeah, so they'll go like pretty much half of the eggs and just leave like this much of their tail
Hmm.
on the eggs, and they'll take the food, wrap it, eat it, and then go back right on the eggs.
Wow. How do
Yeah.
you control your temperatures? Are you using a thermostat?
Yeah, I just use a thermostat at the moment. I do want to get a better one. Mine works perfectly fine, but I like to have the best for my snakes. So yeah, it's just set at 31 degrees at the moment. But again, it does fluctuate a little bit. It'll go from like 29. Sometimes it'll get a little bit hotter at 32. But the mums are amazing at keeping the eggs at right on 31, like 24/7.
Mm. When did you say that you stopped feeding prior? Do you stop feeding prior to cooling, or do you do it kind of all at the same time?
Yeah, so I stopped feeding about a month prior to cooling so that they can be completely emptied of food so it's not like rotting inside of them.
Sure.
And so they're completely no food for a month before then you start cooling. And then once we bring the heat back up for 24 hours a day for 2 weeks straight, like in August, then I'll start feeding them again.
Awesome. So
Yeah.
then, yeah, okay. And ha, do you run into any issues when you're keeping them together, or is there ever any food responses or anything like that?
No, I haven't had any yet. I have a couple snakes that are really food motivated or they do not like being handled. They do not like they're just not very tame, and I have never had a problem with pairing. They only like to bite me. They thankfully don't like to bite their boyfriend.
That's funny. How do you maintain humidity? Are you misting? Or is it what's your ambient humidity like in your area there?
Ambient humidity, it varies a lot. Sometimes it can be 50, sometimes it can be 80. It really depends on the weather, and I've never had a problem with it. So I don't do anything for humidity unless they're maternally incubating. They have a water bowl. If it's really dry and I'm noticing they're still getting a little bit of stuck shed, and they're still drinking though, and they're still getting food soaked in water, then I will give them a little bit of a spray. But no, I don't really measure it, and I don't really do anything to help it except for when they're maternally incubating. Then I will spray them at least twice a week.
Okay. Do
Yeah.
they ever soak in their water bowls or?
Not often. I see them drinking all the time. I've probably seen them soak once or twice.
Okay.
So yeah.
And when they're like before they're of breeding age, are you still like at what age do you start cycling them? Like their temperatures and the food. When do you start that?
That's when they're up to weight and up to the age.
Okay.
So yeah, the
So once you
150
plan to breed them, then they get cycled.
Yeah, definitely. I was doing some more research on possibly cycling them at breeding age, even if I'm not going to breed them that year or just slightly before. I don't cycle my hatchlings or my yearlings. They're too young. I want to keep them on heat and keep them feeding and growing. But I have read many articles of it's beneficial to cycle them even if they're not breeding, so they can just have that natural cycle of being off heat for certain seasons. So I was considering doing that. But yeah, currently I just cycle for breeding.
Okay. And you said that the ideal enclosure size for an adult is like a meter wide, so that would be about 3 feet.
Yeah, something like that. So I currently keep by 60 centimeters long, which is too short in my opinion. I definitely want to upgrade. It works fine. They have a very good hot spot, very cool spot. Their cool spot is at 26, 26 degrees. Ambient is about 26, 28. And then the hot spot is at 31 to 33. And so it works perfectly fine. They can stretch out nicely. They have lots of enrichment, but I do definitely want to upgrade that. And I believe a 90 centimeter would be a minimum, maybe a little bit lower. But if I want to go that little bit bigger just to give them that extra space.
Okay, and for the listeners, 26C is 78.8 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's your cool side, right?
Yeah.
And then what did you say your hot spot is?
31 to 34, 33. So yeah, about 33. I probably keep it
Okay,
at.
so yeah, 88 degrees. So
Mm.
just about. So okay. And then you said right now you're keeping in 60 centimeter
Yes.
enclosures. So that's about
60. Mhm.
that's about 2 foot.
Yeah, so 60 by 45 by 45.
Okay.
And I want to do a meter by 60 by 60 or 45 probably. The width doesn't it's not very necessary. I think the length is definitely more important because you really only just need to fit the water bowl, the hide, and then any other enrichment. Whereas the length is more important because then they can stretch out and the height so they can climb.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to be keeping my spotteds in I'll do the best I can here. Meter wide and half meter tall.
Yeah. Yeah, that's perfect. And look, these species are terrestrial, but doesn't mean they won't use it. Even if a species is terrestrial, you should absolutely provide climbing enrichment and height. So I hate the argument where they're like, but it's a terrestrial species. It won't climb. I'll keep it in a tub or I'll keep it in a really short enclosure. But they will still use it. Just
Yeah.
because they're a terrestrial species doesn't mean they don't deserve the opportunity to be able to exhibit climbing behaviors that they most likely would exhibit in the wild. I've seen so many photos of terrestrial species like Woma pythons or spotted pythons climbing trees and in caves. So,
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah, my ball python has climbing opportunities, and I often see her up on branches.
absolutely. They're a terrestrial and burrowing species. So,
Hmm.
you would never think that, oh, they're not going to climb. They can be kept in a tub, but they absolutely need climbing enrichment. And I've read articles where they've done studies on animals, pythons kept, it was ball pythons kept in tubs compared to enclosures. And people always say, well, it's gonna stress them out. They won't eat, especially ball pythons can be picky eaters. And if you fill the enclosure enough with enough clutter and enrichment, so it's not just a big open space, then it'll be perfectly fine. And these studies showed that keeping in enclosures versus keeping in tubs, it causes stress, which causes when they rub their nose. So, and they absolutely use the climbing enrichment in their enclosure. So it's not just, hey, you should provide the climbing opportunity, because What if they use it? It's shown that keeping in tubs without climbing enrichment can absolutely cause stress.
Mm. And I do use tubs, but it's for babies.
Yeah, absolutely same.
You know, because I've put I've put snakes in enclosures too soon, and then they go off food, you know,
Mhm.
and they get stressed out. It's just too much open space, and um, you know, it so I like the fact that you're saying that, you know, you use the tubs as grow out containers essentially,
Yeah.
and obviously babies. I mean, gosh, you know, Antaresia are so tiny when they're babies.
Yes, they
It's
are.
insane.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a time and place for them. Tubs are very useful, but there's a time and place. I use them for my hatchlings because they only stay in there for a few months as they grow out, and then they get moved into enclosures when they're large enough. And yeah, so tubs definitely have their place. And when you do use them, you still have to provide enrichment. I hate seeing tubs with a paper towel and a water bowl. They don't even
Mm,
have a hide, or they have one hide. That is absolutely not proper husbandry. I don't care what species you're keeping. That is
yeah.
not good for any species. So enrichment is always a necessity, even for the hatchlings. But yeah, tubs definitely can be used, but they have their time and place.
Yeah, I have I don't know if you guys have them over there in Australia. We have a lot of like 3D printed perches for
Oh
tubs.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Chris Sexton, who's with Heli Guy Serpents, he makes these awesome perches for inside tubs, and
Mm-hmm.
they have a water bowl holder, and so I use those with the water bowl and then the hide in the back, and it seems like a good combination. So they can get all of everything they need in a very, you know, compact area.
Yeah, I have seen the hide water bowl combo where it's a water bowl and then there's a little hole and they can hide like underneath the water bowl. I think that's absolutely great, and you can definitely implement that in tubs or even enclosures. And there's nothing wrong with those things. You just need that a climbing enrichment, and you need foliage, you need clutter, you need something to stimulate them mentally and physically. So like in my hatchlings, they're hatchling tubs, they're not very tall, but they're tall enough that I can put a stick kind of on an angle from corner to corner so they can climb to the top of their tub if they want to. And it's less in climbing enrichment than I would like, which is why they only stay there for a couple months. If they don't, they'll stay there until I sell them, and if I don't sell them, then they go into an enclosure until they do sell.
Right on.
Yeah.
What do you use as food items? What are you feeding? Is it rodents? Do you offer any foul prey?
I don't currently. I'm also doing research on introducing some quail and some other food items just as to mix things up and to give them that extra food related enrichment. But currently I mainly feed mice because they're more nutrient dense and they have less fat content compared to rats. So I feed mice for all of my snakes unless they're breeding. So just before breeding season, before I stop feeding them, I'll feed my females hopper rats so they get that extra fat content that they can use that energy to obviously develop their eggs, and then after laying eggs so that they can get that body condition back up to standard.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are you feeding babies that are hatching? I mean, some of these are small. I've
They're
heard that they can,
tiny.
yeah,
Yep.
I've heard that they can be hard to get started. So what is that process like?
Absolutely. So I start with pinky mice, and oftentimes they're still too big. So I'll have to cut off its head or I'll have to cut off its tail. There's a couple times I've used a rat tail, just the base of it, and it's like this big.
Oh my
And
gosh.
it just got them to eat, and it was like a giant lump in them. So yeah, you just gotta chop them up and figure out what fits, and then eventually they'll go from pinkies to fuzzies to hoppers, and then usually I go from hopper mice straight to adult mice, and they stay on adult mice their entire lives unless they're breeding, and they'll get a hopper rat, or if I want to give them a treat, or if they are a little bit, I want them to get a little bit higher weight, then I'll give them extra large adult mice.
And how often are you feeding babies and animals that are like under a year, you know, somewhere in that range?
Yeah, so I feed my hatchlings every 3 days. Unless they're not very good eaters, then feeding them, trying to feed them too often when they're not taking it can just cause stress. So it depends on the individual. But if they're a good eater, every 3 days, slowly go to every 5 days, then to every 7 days. And then I usually feed my adults every 7 to 10 to 12 days. It really depends on the individual. Like Cupcake, the Stimson's Python, I was feeding her every 10 days. All my other adults at the time were on every 7 days, and she was getting a bit fat. So she's on every, I think, 12 to 15 days. Unless it's breeding, then I'll keep her on the mice because I don't like to move her to rats because she does tend to hold on to that fat. So I'll keep her on the mice to just keep getting those nutrients in her rather than the fat. And I'll just feed her a little bit more often. But besides that, there's a few snakes like Wizard. He's really good body condition, and I don't breed him very often. So I have him on every 10 days. But most of my females stay on every 7 days throughout the year, just so they can continuously get back to that normal body condition. And yeah, they'll be on the mice, and if they are breeding, then they'll go back on the rats.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, you do have to kind of figure out a strategy for each animal. Like
Yeah.
my ball python, she eats once a month and she's fat and she has
Yeah.
rolls, and it's like, what is happening here? And then others, you don't know where it's going.
Yeah, seriously. Like Wizard, I used to feed him probably way too much when I first got him. And he never got fat. Like he's always had perfect body condition, and then now he's on every 10 days, so it's so much less than he used to eat, and he's still perfect. He's not losing too much weight. So, yeah.
How do you handle a baby that doesn't feed? How do you get them started when they're reluctant?
I have there's a couple hatchlings that I haven't had luck on, but my main things to go for first, first you just offer it to them, really simply, and you just tap them a little bit, and you try to get them interested in it. And a couple times they've taken it first try, which was so exciting because it's like, yes, I don't have to worry and stress about getting them to feed. And then if that doesn't work, then I move on to braining. So that's basically where you just cut open the mice's head and expose the brain tissue so that they can smell it, and it kind of gets them more rowdy about it. After that, I will squeeze the head really hard, so it basically the juices come out of like the nostrils. I also
So
find that really
gross.
hurts. It is very gross, but it works. And what else after that? I'll just keep trying. I'll leave it in overnight. I'll keep tapping them. Or if all the techniques don't work, I'll try assist feeding. So we hold the head of the snake, which is so hard because they are so small.
Yeah.
And you try and get in their mouth with like feeding tongs or like a skewer. And you put the head. I'll usually won't assist feed them an entire mouse. I'll just cut the head off, or I'll do a tail, and I'll put that in there. I'll just leave it in their mouth. I won't push it down their throat, and hopefully they eat it and they don't spit it out. If they do spit it out, then you kind of got to go to more force feeding, where same thing, tail or head. And or if they're big enough, then you might do a pinky, and you kind of push the head down their throat. See if they eat it that way. If they don't eat it that way, then try to push almost the entire thing down their throat. I try not to do that because it's so stressful, and if they don't want it, they have to regurgitate it, and after they've regurgitated it, you have to wait at least like 2 to 3 weeks before you can feed them again, because you'll just cause more damage if you just keep trying.
Yeah, that sounds really stressful for you and the animal.
Yeah, definitely, which is why it's a last resort. I don't like assist feeding or force feeding, but sometimes it's necessary, unfortunately.
Do you think that once you get something in them, it just gets their metabolism going and then they start getting hungry, or like, what do you think that is? Like, how many times do you have to assist feed before they'll start taking it on their own?
I don't know. Truly, like, it depends. Sometimes you'll assist feed them once and they're amazing eaters. Sometimes they never get to amazing eaters. I've had a couple hatchlings where I keep assist feeding them. They're digesting fine, but they just they don't eat, they will never, they never take it. And sometimes you'll assist feed them one time, they'll digest it just fine, you'll come back the next morning and they're not alive anymore. So I'm not 100% sure. Maybe something's happened, they're not developed right, and they're not eating because they weren't built to digest it, because obviously some of them pass away. So why did they pass away? They're eating perfectly fine. It's just suddenly they're not thriving.
Yeah, it's too bad. But at the same time, you know, I've heard people say, like, do you really want to breed an animal that doesn't want to feed, you know, and possibly pass that on and then just have more babies that don't want to feed. So it's almost like natural selection within the hobby.
Yeah, absolutely. I do agree with that to a certain point. There was I had a snake that she was sold to me supposedly eating really well, never ate for me. She was really small for her age as well. And she was just deteriorating. She was getting skinny. She was not shedding. She was not doing well despite doing everything perfectly. So we did have to euthanize that one. And sometimes, look, yeah, natural selection, some animals are just not meant to be. So I will take that into account. If they're a good size or that I think they have a chance, then I will assist feed them. But I had a clutch. It was actually paradox albino spotted pythons, and I know of, I think, 2 or 3 ever, like, in the world that exist, and I got twins. And I was I was stunned. So they both passed away because they were both twins. So they were both one was completely kinked and deformed, and so it didn't even make it out of the egg. The other one was so small because the kinked one was pretty big, and it must have taken all the nutrients. And the one that was alive was so small, it was like 2 or 3 grams, and wow. I did not think it was going to survive. But look, it was the 3rd paradox albino spotted python in the world. So I thought, look, I always try, even my eggs that go bad or moldy and they look dead, I will still incubate them, because sometimes you can get a snake out of it that's perfectly healthy. So incubate until no debate. I think that's like a quote from Snake Discovery. I love that. So I always do that, and I do that with my hatchlings as well. I will try to do everything I can, but obviously if I notice they're deteriorating or I notice they're not taking the food and there's something wrong there, then you have to make the decision to, is it really worth keep stressing out and trying? And even if they do end up eating, is this going to be a healthy snake? So
yeah. What are some health issues that you run into?
So stuck shed is not very often. I don't get it anymore. I keep the hydration up just because by soaking the prey items in water, spraying if I need to, and then obviously they have their water bowl. So that's not really an issue anymore. I don't see many. I have had one of my albino spotted pythons has a respiratory infection at the moment. So it's a bit weird because she's had it for a while and it hasn't affected, like, it was very not obvious to see. So she would very randomly get like bubbles. So that's a sign of respiratory infection, the excess saliva. So she's in quarantine and it's not deteriorating her. She's eating amazingly. She's not losing weight. And I don't see the bubbles almost at all anymore. And I've taken her to the vet. They're like, she's 100% healthy. But they did a swab and she does have a pathogen. She does have a respiratory infection. Not sure if it's bacterial or viral, but she's completely separate from my collection. I'm not risking that. But I can't seem to get her over it. We've tried the treatments with the vet and she's not deteriorating, yet she still has it. So it's a bit weird and we're trying to figure out, that's another reason why we haven't bred her this year. So that's probably the only thing that I have in terms of health issues in my collection. All my snakes have done amazing. Yeah, I haven't really had any issues. I think I had one of my snakes had like a scale rot. Basically, their scales were discolored, and it was really small, and there was only like two scales. And I'm like, wow, okay, what's this? Like, I know my enclosures are hygienic. I don't leave poop in there for weeks at a time or even days at a time. So I was really curious as to why this was happening, and the vet didn't really know either. But it's I've only had it pop up once, maybe twice in the entire time I've been keeping, and it's really easily cured. I spray colloidal silver,
Mm.
so it's basically like silver ions right onto the scales, and then the next time they shed, it's gone.
Hmm.
So yeah, it works really well. I had a snake with a thermal burn once. The heat mat malfunctioned. It was on a thermostat, but I'm not sure what happened. And because snakes can't really tell when there's that rapid change in temperature, so or if it goes up slowly, and he must have just kept sitting on the heat mat even though it was getting hotter. So he got a thermal burn from that, and that was really easily treated. It took a while. It took about 3 sheds to completely get rid of it, and he lost a very small amount of his tail at the bottom. But that was really easily treated with honey. So we put honey on the thermal burn continuously, and we soaked him, make sure to keep it moist, because with a reptile thermal burn, you don't want it to get dry. You need to keep it moist. Whether it's like if we get a cut, then we want to like keep it dry so it scabs. You don't want that with snakes. So yeah, so it was really easy, treated with honey, and it went away. He's doing amazing. But besides that, I haven't really had any issues, thank God.
So with the burn and the honey, did you have to keep on paper then to keep it keep it clean and keep substrate from sticking to it?
Absolutely. So all my snakes that have any sort of health issues, the respiratory infection, the slight scale rot or whatever that was, and then the thermal burn, that's all kept on paper towel so that you can really monitor what's happening. If there's any sort of blood coming from anywhere, it'll be very obvious. You can really easily see their defecation. And of course, you don't want the honey to stick to the substrate. So yeah, absolutely. I keep on paper towels, and thankfully, most of these things happened when they were in quarantine, so it was really easily dealt with.
Okay. When the animals are in quarantine or you're dealing with these issues, are they then confined to a tub just to make it easier?
Yeah. Well, actually, I used to keep quarantine in a tub just to make it easier, like you said. But I do use enclosures because I don't find the tub much easier, to be honest. The enclosures are really easily cleaned, and they have almost no enrichment, very minimal enrichment, because I have to throw it out
Mm.
afterwards. And quarantine isn't that long; they'll be fine, and they're gonna get a beautiful enriching enclosure afterwards. So I do keep in enclosures, but I just make sure I dishwash everything that I will be moving, like if it's a water bowl or a hide. If they have shown any of these issues, I will throw it out. But if they haven't shown any issues in the quarantine, then I might just reuse them if I properly clean them. And yeah, the enclosures are really easily cleaned. I take them outside, I hose them and scrub them down, F10, leave it on. So yeah, I use enclosures, and I haven't had a problem with it. I just make sure to clean them really well.
Right on. When you're selling a snake there in Australia, how does that walk me through that process? Like where are you listing the animals for sale first, or how are you getting connected with a potential buyer?
Yeah, so in Australia, you need a license to have one. So obviously, you have to make sure everyone has their license. There's just the standard license, which is I think is like $50, and then there's the breeder's advanced license, which is what I have. And basically, when I have a snake for sale, I have a Instagram account, obviously. So I get a lot of my customers from there. People are interested. I have a whole wait list for different morphs. So first of all of my wait list clients are contacted first. If there's still snakes left, I'll post it on Instagram, Facebook, all my social media. And then if there's still snakes left after that, I'll post it on Reptile Classifieds. It's basically Australia's morph market. And there is so many animals available in there. It's Australia's biggest reptile marketplace.
Is that like a website?
Yeah, it's a website. It's called Reptile Classifieds.
I want to jump on there and look at it.
Yeah, go have a look. There's tons of animals on there. And if I really have snakes left over that are not selling, then I'll put it on Gumtree. I don't like doing that because sometimes you can just get people that don't know what they're doing and they're just, oh, look, a snake. I want a snake. And they haven't done their proper research. So no matter who's buying it, I make sure that they know what they're getting into. I will not sell to just anybody. I need to make sure that they have the correct setup. They know what they're talking about. They know their husbandry. And obviously you don't have to be an expert, but you need to at least know the basics. Yeah.
What is that vetting process like for you?
So basically I ask them, what have you set up? What do you know? Like, tell me how you're going to keep them. And if it's all correct, I'll go, great, you've done your research. Here's the snake. If they haven't, I have a bunch of documents that I'll eventually post on my blog, on my website, on keeping Antaresia species, and lots of different like tips and tricks and common things that can happen, substrates. And if you don't have this substrate, here's an alternative. So I'll give them the information, and then I'll happily keep the snake on hold after a deposit, and then I'll give them the time to obviously set up the enclosure and do everything right, and then I will give them the snake basically.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And when you get somebody their new pet snake, what are you telling them as far as like handling? Are you telling them hands off for a little while? Like, how do you walk them through that, being a new snake owner, if they have, like, let's say, no prior experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So if they have no prior experience and they either know or I have explained to them the husbandry, they have a perfect setup, then when I give them the snake, whether it's fright or in person, I will tell them to not handle it, put them straight in the enclosure, not handle it for 2 weeks at all. You can try to feed it. I would say it doesn't really matter when's the last time it fed. Just fed it about a week after having it. Because you don't want to stress them out. It's a brand new environment. So don't handle for 2 weeks. Feed it about a week after you've had it. If it's still not eating, wait 2 weeks because I sell all of my snakes eating. If it's not eating, it's stress. So yeah, I make sure my hatchlings have had at least 15 feeds, and obviously adults are adults. They've been eating for a while. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Don't handle it for 2 weeks. Feed it after a week. If it hasn't eaten that week, wait another 2 weeks and then try again. And then if it still hasn't eaten, then you can go troubleshooting. Or do you have your temperatures correct? Do you have your substrate? Are you feeding it the right prey item? Is it the right temperature? Are you soaking it with water? Like there's a bunch of different variables.
Right on.
Yeah.
So I saw some posts of yours on a subject that you seem to be pretty passionate about with the ant killer.
Yes. Oh Lord. So it is a rabbit hole, and it is horrible. There's a national fire ant eradication program. You probably wouldn't know this because you're not in Australia, but basically what they're doing is they're using baits, periproxyphene and esmethoprene soaked baits. And these are insecticides and they're hormone disruptors. So we're spreading this aerially by helicopter and by land, spreading it over people's properties. There has been so many like reports of dead animals and dead pets, and there's even a vet that's spoken out that said there is a correlation between this fire ant treatment and the toxicity levels in the kidneys of these pet dogs. So there's absolutely what's the word, like they're connected somehow. Absolutely.
Yeah, there's a correlation.
Yeah, correlation, that's the word. So yeah, it's just horrible. We're working with lawyers and we're trying to get this stopped, or at least get it off our property, because our property was baited against our consent. They said, we're coming on whether you like it or not. And after speaking with the lawyer, they're not allowed to do that.
Mm.
So there's just so many things going wrong here, and they always say the science is clear, it's safe and effective. It's not safe and effective, and the science is never clear. Science is always evolving. You can never say that, oh, we're right, you're wrong, because you might find something new. There's so many variables to consider.
Yeah, especially with something that you're dumping on the earth and it's being ingested in ways that it was never ingested in a laboratory setting, so
Absolutely.
you have new science then.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a world renowned etymologist. He came out with an article I posted on my Instagram saying that he does not agree with the program, basically.
Mm.
And it's not like I have nothing against eradicating fire ants. They're an invasive species here. I'm not complaining that you want to get rid of them. Get rid of them. I don't care. But the way that you're getting rid of them is causing more harm than the fire ants themselves. And it's not like this is our only option. There's so many other alternative options. Like that same etymologist, he created an invention. I think it's steam or hot water, basically. And it kills fire ants very effectively. And even if you don't want to buy that product, boil a kettle and pour the hot water into the nest. Like there are so many alternatives that work that you don't need to poison your land for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that, I mean, there has to be a concern for human health there as well, right? I mean, I'm assuming people
Absolutely.
have gardens and they're growing their
Mhm.
own food, and then you're getting this chemical on your vegetables or whatever you might be growing.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we have a garden, we have like 15 fruit trees, and myself and my parents and even my cat have had health issues. My cat had a pyometra, which is an infection in the uterus, as soon as the bait started, as soon as the treatment started. She's a
Mm.
9-year-old cat. She hasn't had any problems, and she got a pyometra. And look, it's very hard to prove that there is a correlation, like very distinct evidence, but there's no coincidences, and it's very weird that they're both happening.
Yeah.
So they get baited. My cat gets a pyometra. I have myself my own medical issues that have started because of this treatment. As soon as this treatment started, I haven't been sick in. I get sick like maybe once a year, like everybody else, when it's winter. And I've been to the doctor so many times. Have these issues that suddenly popped up since the fire ant bait treatment started.
Mm.
So
Yeah, and I remember you saying that it's going, it's draining off and going into waterways
absolutely.
and all
Yeah,
that.
we have a creek in our backyard as well. And we've lived on this property for like 10 years. And it doesn't matter if it's stormed, sometimes it gets a little bit dirty, but it's always looks natural.
Mm.
And ever since the treatment started, it looks like an oil spill. It looks horrible.
Mm.
Like I have before and after photos. I'll probably post them on my Instagram eventually. That we've never seen our creek look like this. And it's only started since the treatment. I've been here for 10 years. I don't know
Yeah.
what to tell you. So
When did the issue with the fire ants start?
like with the fire ants being invasive species or the treatment?
With them being an invasive species.
I'm not sure, to be honest. I think it's been a while, and I know other countries have had the same issue and have tried to eradicate them. I think likely using the same method, and it's never worked before. So I don't know why they think it's going to work this time.
Yeah, we have them here in Florida. We have fire ants, and they're a nightmare, and I hate them.
Yeah,
But you dump, you can use poison too, and use it concentrated in one area and not the entire landscape. And you
yeah,
can really knock down the numbers doing that and boiling water. But Florida's a lost cause. I mean, they're everywhere here.
yeah. Look, I've never seen a fire ant. That's the other
Oh.
thing. That's the other thing. They're eradicating this invasive species, and I'm not saying they're not here. They are here, I'm sure, but I've never seen one. Never, not on my property. And it's not even the fact that they're using these chemicals. Like my neighbors use Roundup. We know Roundup is horrible. So if
Yeah.
you want to use the chemicals, use the chemicals. It's your own choice. It's your own property. You're poisoning your own land. But to force this on people that don't want it, to go against their consent and trespass onto their property basically and poison their land is completely wrong.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, our local government agencies use Roundup a ton, and they use it on everything. They use it on waterways and things like that to knock vegetation back, and it just turns it
Yeah.
into this nasty, rotting. You know, it's
Yeah.
disgusting.
Yeah. It's not right. And they need to look at other alternatives.
What else about Australia pisses you off?
Uh, all right. So the fire ant stuff, definitely. Like, I'm sure this is also a thing in America, but the lack of knowledge when it comes to husbandry of keeping species. So
Hmm.
people will just say, "I want a snake," and they'll go get one, but they don't know how to keep it properly. And yeah, I'm sure this is a problem in America. People don't do their research. It's not a Australian thing, but people in general, they need to do more research on husbandry. This is a live animal that you're caring for, and you need to know it. You need to be at least know the basics in husbandry. Even better if you're an expert and you've done so much research, because you're keeping a live animal and you need to be able to provide for it properly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think that should be a licensing thing, like part of the licensing process, or do you think that's up to the individual?
I think that would be amazing. Like, if you, after you get your license, you have to take like a test and be able to answer the questions properly. And look, there's also a lot of different debates between how to properly keep different species. So there is not necessarily one right way, but there's some things that currently we know are right. For example, you don't keep Antaresia at like 20 degrees Celsius at the hotspot. That's something that you know is wrong. Maybe in the future there'll be new information that comes out that maybe that's better. But at the moment, with the information we have, you keep at like 30 to 34 degrees on the hot spot, 24 to like 26 on the cool spot. So there's these ranges and these simple numbers of how to keep. You need a hot spot and a cool spot. We know that. And some people buy a snake and don't know that. So yeah, I think it would be great if possibly part of the licensing is you have to take a test on husbandry and how to care for them.
Do you like the process that Australia has for licensing? Do you think that's a beneficial thing, or do you think would you like it better if it was more like America and it was just you want a snake, you go get one?
I do like the licensing because it kind of offers a level of commitment. You can't just go buy a snake. I have to spend $50 to get a license to get a snake. Or if I want to breed, I have to be responsible enough to be able to spend $400 on a license to be able to breed. So I don't mind the licensing. It used to be horrible because you had to do like paper records and it was just so bad. But now that they've moved to more online, it's a lot easier. So I wouldn't say it's bad. Yeah, I don't really see an issue with it, and I think it adds another level of that commitment to it.
Do people ever get denied or anything like that, or is it like you just have to pay to play?
I'm It's been years since I bought a license, so I'm not quite sure. I don't think you can get denied. I think, well, you need to add like your ID or your address and your full name. So I guess if none of your personal information matches up, you can get denied. But after you apply for one, it only takes 30 days and then you get your license.
Okay. Do you guys have like pet shops over there?
Yeah, we do have pet stores. Usually they don't have reptiles. There's a few reptile pet stores, and they don't obviously just sell reptiles. And usually I'm not quite impressed with how they keep them. There are a few pet stores that I do actually really like how they keep, and the people that own them are breeders. And if I have snakes, extra snakes that after I've gone through my wait list, then I will sell to that pet store as well. So yeah, we do have reptile pet stores, but not very many of them. Usually going to a breeder is the best way to go.
What about like expos and things, reptile shows?
Yeah, we do have expos. We have one they're all over Australia, but I know in like the Gold Coast, Brisbane area, there's about one a year. I think there's like 4 this year though. And last year and this year, it was held by Shinko's Critters. I think that's how you say it. I vended at the one last year, and I'm vending at the one next year. Sorry, I vended at the one this year. I forget it's the end of the year. And then I'm vending at the one next year as well. They're awesome. I love them. It's a bunch of breeders and like companies like Snake Sanctum and Mighty Morphin Aussie Reptiles. And yeah, they have amazing animals. And there's so many different morphs and there's so many different products for sale. I love expos. They're awesome.
Nice. That's cool. And then
Yeah.
it's kind of a like a community thing, right? Everybody can get together and they have a common
Yeah.
interest.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you is there any kind of licensing for owning a cat? Don't you guys have a cat problem over there?
No, not that I know of. I know some areas you can't own a cat because they are it's like a national park area or something. But
Mm.
no, there's you just get a cat, I believe.
Oh wow. All right.
Yeah,
People all right, I had heard that like there's cat hunting going on in Australia.
there is. I
Wow,
don't know. Maybe there is.
that's
I have no idea. I'm just know about reptiles. Don't ask me about cats.
Well, you live in Australia. I thought you'd
Yeah.
see neighbors like out there hunting cats or something.
No, I've had cats like not wild cats, but pet cats that are wild roaming come to my door. So
Oh,
no,
okay.
I don't see many cats, and I don't think we hunt them. I'd hope not, just like
See,
randomly killing
I'm
cats on the
talking to
street.
people at work and they're telling me about people wearing cat fur hats and all sorts of stuff over
Ugh,
there.
this is like the things you hear of. We go to school on a kangaroo. Like,
Wait, that's not true?
no, we don't go to school on a kangaroo. We have cars. Some
That's
of them are
wild.
kangaroo shaped.
Yeah, and your steering wheel's on the wrong side of the car too.
The right side.
Well, yeah. I guess it's
Oh.
yeah. All right. Well, is there anything else you want to talk about with your business and snake keeping and keeping in general and husbandry, or do you think we covered all the topics?
I think we covered it all pretty good. I love keeping reptiles. It's amazing. I love focusing on kind of more the medical and husbandry side of it. Have I have a 37-year study plan. I
Wow.
have so many tabs open on my computer of certificates and courses and university degrees and webinars and continued professional development that I want to do because I just love information. I love learning and I want to be able to do anything. I want to be able to work in a zoo if I want to. I want to be able to work in a clinic. I want to be able to apply that knowledge to my own collection. And yeah, our business being focused on morphs specifically, I really want to be able to provide my animals with the top care possible so that you can get really expensive, interesting morphs that are also really healthy and thriving snakes because sometimes new morphs tend to be a little bit weaker. So yeah, that's our business goal is to be able to create these new and exciting morphs while still keeping healthy and vibrant animals. And then, of course, being able to develop these product ranges so that I can keep in the best way possible.
How long is your internship for?
I've been doing it for about a year now.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what is that? Are you going to get like a certification? Are you already certified or?
Yeah, so it's a veterinary nurse internship, and that would give me a certificate in animal studies, a Cert 2. And then from there, I want to go and get my Cert 3 in wildlife and exhibitation. That would allow me to be like work in a zoo if I wanted to. And then from there, I would go to university and get my Cert 4 in vet nursing. And then from there, I would go get my bachelor's in veterinary science, and then so on. I want to get a PhD. So there's lots of plans, but yeah.
That's awesome. Do you do any kind of like educational stuff with your animals?
I used to do workshops on like snake bites or husbandry or feeding. I don't do it as much anymore. Usually I do have a husbandry consult service up. Basically, I get so many questions. So it takes a lot of my time and oftentimes it's what's the word, like situations that are very specific. Like my snake isn't eating, I've tried all this, I don't know what to do. So I have to go through my records, go through my notes, go through my own knowledge, basically do some research and help them with their issue. And it takes up a lot of time. So I started this consult service where basically if you have a question, because I'm not a veterinary professional, I can't answer medical questions. But I do have certificates. I have a certificate in zoology, in herpetology, biology from TAFE. So I do have credentials, and I'm able to provide knowledge and tips and advice on husbandry issues. So if your snake is not eating or your snake is not shedding, then absolutely I can help you out with that. But unfortunately, I can't help everybody for free. So I started this service, and it's going well. And I'm really happy that I get to be able to provide knowledge to people, because sometimes just searching up on Google isn't enough. And
Yeah.
to a vet and asking them these questions costs too much. So asking me requires, it's cheaper than going to a vet because they know all the medical things. And if you don't need answers to a medical question, then why go there, right? So I have the credentials to be able to answer husbandry questions, so that's why I started the service.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You said snake bites. Do you mean like venomous?
Yeah, venomous snake bites. So like first aid if you get bitten by a brown snake.
What can you walk me through that?
So basically, I haven't done these workshops in forever, but you basically just have to bandage the wound up. Like if you get bitten on your arm, you bandage your entire arm to kind of restrict the blood flow, and you don't move, and you have to mark the spot of where you were bitten by the snake and write the time down so that when you go to the hospital, they know what antivenom to use. And if you know the species of snake, that also helps. And they know how long you've been injected ago. So yeah.
How often how often do you run into venomous species there?
Almost never.
Huh.
Like Australia is known for all the venomous snakes and spiders, but I think I've seen 1, 2 brown snakes
Wow.
ever. And I live rural. Like this is this is the area that you're supposed to be finding a lot of them. So yeah, I don't see them a lot. I want to see them. I wish I saw more venomous snakes, but yeah, I don't.
know. That's funny. It's like a lot of people that come to Florida, they think that we have alligators everywhere and venomous snakes and spiders and everything, and
Yeah.
it's really not that bad. So it's kind of funny. You're breaking down a lot of my misconceptions about Australia.
Yeah. I do. I've actually seen like a redback spider once.
Mm.
Like there's nothing here.
And it looks like you're out in the middle of a forest, right?
Yeah, this is my backyard. Like it goes for so long, and there's a creek. This is like the best place you could find snakes. And I think I've seen one carpet python that was like near our garden, near our house. And that was about it. And the brown snake was down by the creek. That was when we almost first moved here, so like 8 years ago. And yeah, the other brown snake was at the vet clinic. It wasn't even it wasn't even one that I found in the wild.
Oh, it was somebody's pet?
No, it was a dog had gotten bitten by a snake.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I gotcha. Did the dog make it?
Yes, thankfully.
Wow. How dangerous are brown snakes?
They're very dangerous. They're one in the top most venomous snakes.
Mm.
And look, every snake bite should be taken with caution, especially if you don't know how to identify it. So, but especially the venomous snakes. Like if you get bitten by any venomous snake, definitely go to the hospital. But there's some snakes like a keelback or a common tree snake that are mildly venomous. Those are colubrids, and they're not that serious. But yeah, definitely the brown snakes, the red belly blacks. We have the inland taipan, the most venomous snake in the world. And yeah, so.
Have you ever seen one of those?
No, they're not where I live. They're more inland. They're more near the red center of Australia.
Oh, okay. You don't go there?
Nah, I don't travel really. I like my house. I have stuff to do. I have snakes to take care of and courses to do. So I don't really travel, but I hope to see more snakes around my property.
Yeah, heck yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, jump on your kangaroo and, ride out
Yeah.
there and check it
Go
out.
find a snake.
All right. Well, thanks, Ava, for coming on.
Awesome.
I had a lot of fun talking to you, and thanks for sharing all your information. And I'm enjoying having Australians on.
Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, it was amazing. Thank you for inviting me.